Good morning. It is a Friday, December the 7th, and this is the drill. And thank you very much. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America today, because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo, talking to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. So I was thinking about how the way that the left has changed our culture over the years. And it started with their approach to and critique of art in America. And Ayn Rand is correct when she says that art is fundamentally, fine art is about the artist's expression or viewpoint, world viewpoint, how the artist sees the world. And so that was the area that the left wanted to change and attack. That's the place they were going to start. Change the way we view ourselves. A lot of they would attack our art by saying it's not realistic. For instance, you would have Father Knows Best, shows like that on television, and you would have the Brady Bunch, and you would have war movies that had John Wayne and westerns with John Wayne in it, those kinds of things. And again, they were not meant to be realistic. They were meant to be reflections of how we view ourselves and view our culture, view our civilization or society. So, but they came out, the left did, and said it's not realistic. That's not the way life really is. Life really isn't like that. Okay. And everybody was caught off guard by that statement. Nobody knew exactly what to say. Nobody on the right bothered to say, yes, it is. Because you could just say, sure it is. It's an absolutely, for sure it's a depiction of the way things really are. Because in some households, it is really like that. I knew some kids in school that had a Leave It to Beaver kind of existence. Not everybody does, but there are those people that do. So it is, just as a matter of fact, just as real as anything else. So in any case, the point is that nobody responded. The people that should have, William F. Buckley and people like that were conservative and are supposed to be guardians of American culture, sat around with their thumb up their ass and their brains in neutral. And so after they were able to successfully make the critique that this isn't the way things really look, then they started to tell people the way things really do look. That life is really about not happy marriages, but about divorce. Not about children, but about pregnant teens having to make awkward decisions about whether or not to have an abortion. Not about whether happy families, but about spousal abuse and beaten children. Okay, so what they have effectively done over the years is change reality itself. Change reality and how we view reality. And think about that for a second in terms of how is that going to have an effect on a child. Child grows up with certain expectations, and they look around themselves and see what it is that society seems to expect from them. And they see that reflected in cultural cues, in terms of art, let's say. Again, you watch television, and if you're watching television, you're seeing the Brady Bunch, and you're seeing Father Knows Best and shows like that, then you know pretty much what it is, how the society views itself, and what it is the society expects from you as an average child. Whether you care to go along with that or not, that's a different matter. But the point is, you know clearly what it is that they're expecting of you. Now, when you've got the Father Knows Best situation versus today, where you have what's called modern family, which is completely unrealistic. No families look like modern family, but that's not the point. The point is that the left has successfully changed what it is that we believe to be real. So now a child growing up looks at Modern Family as an indication of the way it is that society expects them to behave or interact with people. One of the more definite ways that you can see the difference is in how police officers are portrayed, and policing is portrayed. When I was growing up, it was the Highway Patrol, it was Dragnet, it was Adam 12. They were portrayed as professionals. They were that their jobs were necessary, but most of the time it was for fairly mundane things that the officers dealt with. That has been replaced by Hill Street Blues, NYPD Blue, Law and Order, and episodes like that, in which there is a tremendous amount of violence. Watching a police show today, you would believe that police officers are engaged in gun battles each and every day. And although they are engaged in, apparently, at least from what I can see, gun battles more often today than they were when I was growing up. When I was growing up, the average police officer didn't take his gun out of his holster except to qualify on the range. Now it seems like that police officers don't do anything but take their guns out of the holster. It seems to be the first thing. Parking ticket, whoop, out comes the gun. You've run a red light, whoop, out comes the gun. So, but the point is that again, the cultural shift is obvious when you're looking at those kinds of, when you look at the TV shows. The movies are the same way. From John Wayne in, let's say, the war movies, Iwo Jima and whatnot, to Saving Private Ryan. And if you've ever seen Saving Private Ryan, the first few minutes of that movie are absolutely horrifying. It's not a war movie. It's an anti-war movie. They just use a war setting to try to get across an anti-war message, whereas the war movies in the past were more about patriotism, love of country, and the appreciation of heroic deeds. So, but again, by going ahead and being unchallenged in terms of what it is that the left considers to be real, we end up with art, cultural programming that we shouldn't have, and we didn't want in the first place. But we go along with it. The left says that this isn't real. Nobody else stands up to say, "Excuse me, yes, it is." Then, of course, the left then steps into the void and says, "Well, we're going to give you what's real. This is what's real. Abortion is real. Child molestation is real. Divorce is real." And so you also end up now with a malevolent universe premise in terms of your outlook. You look at life as being a dangerous place, a place fraught with failure after failure after failure, and that the only people that are successful are the people that get lucky, cheat, or a combination of the two. So when I come back, I'm going to be reading from Ayn Rand's lexicon. Thank you very much. Welcome back. The Ayn Rand lexicon, and she defines terms and does so by getting really at the essence of what words mean, or getting at the essence of concepts. So today's concept is cynicism. There's nothing so naive as cynicism. A cynic is one who believes that men are innately depraved, that irrationality and cowardice are their basic characteristics, that fear is the most potent of human incentives, and, therefore, that the most practical method of dealing with men is to count on their stupidity, appeal to their knavery, and keep them in constant terror. In private life, this belief creates a criminal. In politics, it creates a statist. But, contrary to the cynic's belief, crime and statism do not pay. A criminal might thrive on human vices, but is reduced to impotence when he comes up against the fact that You can't cheat an honest man. A statist might ride to power by dispensing promises, threats, and handouts to the seekers of the unearned, but he finds himself impotent in a national emergency because the language, methods, and policies which were successful with parasites do not work when the country needs producers. When one discards ideals, the fact that a given policy, such as government controls, is evil, does not constitute a reason for rejecting it. On the contrary, such an estimate serves as an incentive to adopt and expand that policy. To a cynic's mind, that which is evil is potent and practical. So, excellent point. I haven't heard or thought about the definition of cynicism, and I think she makes a very thought-provoking points, or defines the word very well. So when I come back, I'm going to be reading from House and Philosophy, Everybody Lies. Thank you very much. See, House and Philosophy, Everybody Lies. Here we go. So they've been going through, again, the book is about a chapter is dedicated or devoted to a particular student of a particular philosophy. We had one chapter that was dealing with Nietzsche and comparing Nietzsche's writings to the show House and seeing how those compare and contrast. So today, let's see what chapter we're in. Well, it's about logic. That's where we were at before. So, and he was also talking about abduction, making an error about that, but we're at the section called House's Abductions. In any given episode, House has two cases going at once. One is a clinical walk-in, the other is chosen for its challenge. These two kinds of cases also correspond to two kinds of abduction, as Umberto Eco defines them, overcoded and undercoded. The clinical walk-ins require overcoded abductions. They're simple and easy. A man wonders why his skin is orange, and House knows right away. And he knows other things, too, as revealed in this exchange from Pilate. House: unfortunately, you have a deeper problem. Your wife is having an affair. Man: what? House: you're orange, you moron. It's one thing for you not to notice, but if your wife hasn't picked up on the fact that her husband has changed color, she's just not paying attention. By the way, do you consume just a ridiculous amount of carrots and megadose vitamins? Man nods. Carrots turn you yellow. The niacin turns you red. Find some finger paint and do the math. And get a good lawyer. House begins with the first result. A man is orange, but if the man ate lots of carrots and megadose vitamins containing niacin, then he would turn orange. Therefore, he probably eats carrots and niacin. A second result emerges. No one else has noticed the change in color, and the man wears a wedding ring. But if his wife were having an affair, then that would explain her lack of interest in him. And indeed, later, we see she is having an affair. The more interesting cases, however, are those House takes by choice, and that require undercoded abductions. After the symptoms are cataloged, House gathers his team. One by one, they generate possibilities to explain the anomalies. House writes these on a whiteboard. Some are eliminated as too improbable, others for inconsistency with the symptoms. Gradually, the possible diagnoses are reduced to a few. These are then organized hierarchically according to likelihood and efficiency of testing. The cycle of testing and abduction continues until the right diagnosis is in hand and House has solved the case. Developing the final undercoded abduction, however, is often incredibly difficult, and House must rely on his very creative imagination in order to solve the case. In particular, neo-Sherlock Holmes that he is, House thinks of diseases metaphorically as criminals in order to see the problem afresh, as we observe in Autopsy. House: the tumor is Afghanistan, the clot is Buffalo. Does that need more explanation? Okay, the tumor is Al-Qaeda, the big bad guy with brains. We went in and wiped it out, but it had already sent out a splinter cell, a small team of low-level terrorists quietly living in some suburb of Buffalo, waiting to kill us all. Foreman, whoa, whoa, whoa. Are you trying to say that the tumor threw a clot before we removed it? House, it was an excellent metaphor. Angio her brain before this clot straps on an explosive vest. The abduction works like this. After removing a tumor, symptoms of the tumor persist. But if the tumor, just prior to being removed, through a microscopic terraced clot, then the clot would cause the symptoms in question and would explain the anomaly. And the next section is called Musement and Abduction. And when I come back, I'll be reading from Breaking Bad and Philosophy, Badder Living Through Chemistry. Thank you very much. Welcome back. Breaking Bad, Badder Living Through Chemistry. Both, more Breaking Bad is about, again, has a malevolent universe premise to it. It's also a very deterministic show, and very well done, very well acted, very well. All the technical qualities were there. The script was great. And the characterizations were fantastic. Everything about it was well made, and that's why it was a popular show. But it was still basically the idea that, again, that the only way to succeed in life is to cheat, get lucky, or a combination of the two. This section of the chapter is called Remission is Not Redemption. Echoing calls for speech rang across the White family living room, now full of Walt's friends and family. The call drew his thoughts back to the gray office and the moment he heard the news they had all gathered to celebrate. "You're showing signs of remission," said the doctor before launching into a stream of warnings and qualifications concerning just what the term remission really means. According to the doctor, remission usually refers to shrinkage of a malignant tumor. But he cautions one is also technically in remission when the tumor simply stops growing. Walt's remission is a little more promising. Quote, "Walt, your tumor has shrunk by 80%, unquote, from the episode called 4 Days Out. Remission fulfills the dictionary definition of redemption mentioned above. In a metaphorical sense, remission saves the body from evil, namely the evil that threatens the survival of the living organism. This metaphor is often used in relation to cancer. The word malignant, after all, is derived from the Latin word malum, meaning evil. A malignant or cancerous cell is one that replicates very rapidly and invades other cells, causing tumors and tumor growth. If remission is, as the doctor says, the cessation of tumor growth or shrinkage of the tumor, then remission is tantamount to being saved from evil of the cancerous sort. The doctor's news was greeted with laughter, hugs, and more than a few tears. Now, however, standing in front of the friends from whom he has sought desperately to keep his life as Heisenberg a secret, his words repeated the very first thought that greeted it. Quote, "When I got my diagnosis, cancer, I said to myself, you know, why me?" Unquote. Walt continues, quote, "And then, the other day, when I got the good news, I said the same thing." Unquote. Walt's question can be read many ways, but for those of us who are aware of his life as Heisenberg, the question represents a direct attack upon the idea that remission is tantamount to redemption. From the audience's point of view, Walt is asking why he was spared despite the horrible things he's done. From the audience's point of view, remission doesn't bring Walt redemption because remission undermines the very reason Walt had for committing such horrible acts in the first place. Sure, he iced a few guys while feeding poison to junkies, but he made a fortune doing it, and that fortune will secure his family's future long after his untimely death. On the other hand, if Walt lives, there's no reason to think he couldn't continue to support his family without manufacturing poison and without killing anyone. Walt's speech expresses his recognition of this truth. In the light of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, we can understand Walt's remission as a very strong change in the tendencies of his physical organism. Its behavior is no longer threatening its own survival, at least not to such an extreme degree. 20% of the tumor remains. This does perhaps suggest an excellent general definition of health, that being the body's tendency towards behavior that does not threaten its prolonged survival. These tendencies, however, belong to the majority percent of Walt that is subject to the laws of chemistry. They are governed by chemistry, and as such, their relevance to Walt's moral disposition, his redemption, is questionable. When Walt shares the news of his remission with Jesse, we're given a glimpse of the tendencies for which Walt is most concerned. Walt vows to leave the meth business, presumably for good, and in this decision Walt hopes to achieve his redemption. Simply put, when Walt stops cooking, he'll no longer be a bad person because he'll no longer be doing bad things. Like in the case of remission, this behavior will tend to promote Walt's physical survival, but unlike in remission, this behavior seems to originate in that very small percent that falls beyond the governance of his chemical makeup. Walt's vow to Jesse seems to suggest that his decision to stop cooking necessarily follows from his remission, but, as the remainder of this part of Walt's story suggests, the connection is tenuous. And so, that brings us to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill, and until next time, thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.